Audiences hate bad writing, not strong women.
She-Hulk, Peter Pan and Wendy, The Rings of Power, Captain Marvel, The Last Jedi, Mulan. All products featuring a female lead of significant strength or power, all brutally panned by audiences. Why is that? Sexism, right?
No, it's the stories were bad.
Or maybe it's just bad character writing. That's not to discount the awfulness of any actual hatred of female characters due to their gender, but it's quite apparent once you think about
Because those people actually, as crazy as it sounds, those people exist. The people that just actually hate women. And that's crazy.
it that such hateful commentary only finds any significant audience if the wider, less spiteful viewing public dislikes the character for their own, more sensible reasons. The main reason, of course, is that so many lead women in film and TV in the past decade are just horribly written. There are plenty of exceptions, of course, and we'll talk about a few of
Yes.
those. This is a problem most notable in Disney projects, as you could tell from my list, but since Disney owns half the world at this point, it feels like a wider issue. So,
Yeah, that's a good insight. It's like all of like the strong woman uh like stories, they're all coming from Disney, which is really weird. Like I actually did not think about that. I was like, and until he just said it, I was like, wow, that's actually true because a lot of the good stories where it's like a female lead and a good story, they have they haven't came from Disney. Oh my god. Why is that?
So, what exactly makes these characters such bad examples of what a protagonist should be? Well, it's hard to point to any one thing in particular. Not all the characters discussed here will share the same writing flaws. They all fail in varying ways, but they do have some similarities. A common one is being overpowered and not really earning that power. The original animated film
Okay, so being overpowered and not earning it. That seems pretty spot on. I mean, he's like about to show like Mulan. At least Mulan had like a little montage of like, she's going through the ringer, she's trying hard, going through like the boot camp or whatever. And then she only really triumphs like at the end of the movie.
shows Mulan's struggle due to her inexperience and lack of physical prowess, but she makes up for those disadvantages by using her wits, thinking creatively, and refusing to quit even when things seem hopeless. The new Mulan is basically a superhero already due to her midichlorians, and thus is
Oh,
automatically more skilled than everyone else. There's
yeah. I mean, I actually didn't see the new Mulan or whatever because I just heard the reviews and just based off the reviews, like, if you hear the reviews off of one female lead for a Disney movie, you've pretty much heard them all. Like, if there's any like inkling of like, if like I watch some reviews and it's like, it's like a Mary Sue character, a a strong female lead or whatever. I'm just like, oh, it's that kind of movie where it's like no good storytelling, no substance. Okay, I just won't watch it. Like I'm not gonna jump on online or whatever and like start criticizing everything. It's just like, oh, it's that kind of movie. I'm not the target audience then. Who knew? But you know, likewise, it wasn't really that way when I was watching like all the Disney cartoons back in the day, like all the movies. Like it just wasn't like that.
There's no need for her to use her brain or develop new ways to approach problems, leaving the character flat and uninteresting. It's worth noting that when I say earning power, that doesn't necessarily mean doing something noble or virtuous that results in the character being given great power, as is the case with someone like Captain America. Most superheroes do not earn their abilities in such a way. Their
Yeah,
powers are forced upon them through chance or freak accident.
yeah. That's a good point. It's because like Captain America, like the whole story with that was like because he like showed character traits to be like virtuous or whatever. He was worthy, you know, like of sound mental state or whatever to go through the whole like super soldier experiment. Whereas a lot of the other like MCU characters or whatever, they came across their powers or in unnatural ways. The powers just stumbled onto them. Um, and it's the reason why Captain America is like a really great character is because he showed all those things, like he the willingness to sacrifice himself for the like betterment of like everyone else around him when he like jumped on a grenade or whatever. That makes him a good character despite not being like a super soldier.
And that's fine. However, to then earn the power given them, the hero should have to struggle in some way to grow into his or her abilities. The Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie is a classic example of this. Peter
Oh
Parker
yeah.
is given superpowers through a random spider bite, but he doesn't instantly know what to do with his newfound abilities, nor even how to put them to proper use.
This is actually really good insight because like when I first watched this, like the old Spider-Mans with Tobey Maguire, like when they first came out, I was like, "Oh wow, this is awesome." I thought the original Spider-Mans were cool. Like, oh, he just stumbled upon the powers or whatever, but at least he had to go through like some sort of struggle, like trying to get used to them. Like he said before, it wasn't just okay. I woke up. I mean, he did wake up and he was like jacked. His eyesight was fine, but he's still like a goofy guy, essentially.
There are significant growing pains as he learns to be the hero he now must become. A more recent example of this trope that was done fairly well is Kate Bishop from The Hawkeye Show, that at least 20 people watched. Despite being an incredibly talented archer and martial artist from the get go,
Oh
Kate is
dang.
woefully inexperienced in the world of crime fighting and has to learn how to apply her skills in each new situation, relying on the mentorship of Hawkeye himself. On the flip side, we have characters like She Hulk and Rey Skypatine. Rey's progression through her Jedi training was basically just whatever the plot required at any given moment.
Oh yeah, like this was like these movies are just something else, man. Like, oh, you need the only way you can keep on living is for me to heal you. Okay, I just have this power now.
Jen Walters woke up as She Hulk and immediately was in full control of her alter ego. The central struggles that defined the characters from
Yeah.
whom these heroines were derived are just stripped away and not replaced by anything meaningful. Jen's defining character moment takes place during a group therapy session when she comes to the realization that she needs to accept that she doesn't need to be She Hulk to find acceptance. That's right, the apex of Jen's character arc is her deciding that she can be herself. This wasn't an issue, by the way, until after the She Hulk persona was present. Prior to her accident, Jen appeared to be quite satisfied with her life. For some unknown reason, she only decided to get into the dating scene after spending some time as a giant green monster, and then found out apparently there's no market for a reasonably attractive 30 something year old lawyer in Los Angeles. I don't know about you, but to me that feels a bit contrived. Look, I'm not in the online dating scene, but I have it on good authority that women tend to get significantly more attention than men do on those apps, especially
Oh
if they
dang.
happen to be successful and not ugly. Does this show seriously expect me to believe that the only guys willing to even talk to Jen Walters are total creeps and losers, or alternatively, men who are only charming and friendly because they have an agenda?
I mean, but I mean, like he just said, all of those guys that like for all those dating scenes, because I do remember like watching She Hulk or whatever, but I when I watched it like ironically, but I watched all the episodes. Like all the dudes were caricatures of the different types of guys that you could potentially meet. I was like, why would they do this?
Speaking of which, let's talk about Disney's obsession with promoting and elevating women. It's one thing to have female characters who are smart, strong, persistent, and courageous.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite another to simply promote the power of women by setting them up on a pedestal. That kind of treatment is nothing more than pandering, and stories that contain it suffer greatly. Take, for example, the recent Peter Pan and Wendy, which decided that the all male cast of Lost Boys wasn't inclusive enough, and so tossed some girls into the mix. Girls can be rough and tumble too, you hear? Do you know why the Lost Boys were originally all boys?
No.
It's because they fell out of their prams, or strollers for you Americans, and were carted off to Neverland. And girls are far too clever to do such a stupid thing. But
Really? Huh. Okay, yeah, but I didn't really need to know that for them to like like the Lost Boys actually be all Lost Boys. Um, I mean that's like a I guess a semantics thing or whatever, but that's just like a result of the culture at the time, I guess. But I mean, would Peter Pan still have been Peter Pan if they were to include like a couple like girls like acting like lunatics or whatever, like the Lost Boys, like goofy and just getting into like being like rambunctious little kids or whatever. Um, I don't know. I mean, if it was done right, I mean, I don't think I would have really paid it any like mind.
But apparently, no one involved in the casting decision had ever read the original novel, so here we are. Or we could talk about Captain Marvel and the thinly veiled metaphor for the patriarchy embodied in the one dude who keeps telling her to not use her true power because that's cheating or whatever. And of course, She Hulk seems to be mostly made just to complain about the pig headedness of men.
There's a hot chick over there. I'm gonna go talk to it.
Yeah,
Bro, I'm gonna go talk to it, bro. Like when I heard that line, I was like, "There's no way this is a real line," and I just hung my head. I was just like, "Ugh, Jesus," and I just couldn't help. But like, I was, I was just like stunned. I'm gonna go talk to it. I was like, "Wow, they must really hate guys."
nobody talks like that. It
Yeah.
should come as no surprise that these shows and movies don't just fail at writing good female characters, they're terribly written across the board.
I'm the spy.
Oh yeah. It being a bad character is not exclusive to women. It's men can also be bad characters too. With that line right there, I'm the spy. Are you kidding me? How much more on the nose do you have to be? Like, in case you couldn't tell, I'm the spy. Oh my god. Like, this is just treating your audience like they're a bunch of 5-year-olds.
It's not just Ray that
And you know why? It's because they're all stuck in their own like little bubbles or whatever. And they all like think that, oh, everybody that watches movies has a low attention span, so they won't be able to keep up with our complex storytelling abilities for the modern audience. It's like, no, dude. It's just if you make a good movie, we'll let you know it's a good movie. And if you make a shitty movie, we'll let you know it's a shitty movie. How about that?
the audience dislikes, no characters from the Disney trilogy won the hearts of the audience. Remember how great of a character Nick Fury was in Captain Marvel? Yeah, neither does anyone else.
No.
Elrond really stood out in the Rings of Power, right?
I didn't even watch. I think I watched like the first half of the Rings of Power, and then I just fell asleep. And then a couple days later, I was like looking at the reviews to see if I like whether or not I should like finish it, and everyone was saying like, no, just don't. I was like, oh shit. So, I mean, hey, I saved a bunch of time. Oh my god.
Okay, he actually wasn't terrible. He wasn't good, but he could have been worse. Honestly, Galadriel could have been worse too. Not that I think she was well written, she wasn't, and her introduction in the first episode is basically a how to course on annoying audiences. We first meet her as she's being tormented by other elf children for having the audacity to think that her origami swan will float. Not only does this display a severe lack of understanding of what elves are in Tolkien's Legendarium on the writer's part, it demonstrates a cheap trick that modern media likes to use in order to attempt to make the audience like a character.
Bro, I don't know how you can like manage to fuck up Lord of the Rings. Like for real. Like for the most part, like all the movies, including The Hobbit, it should have been like one movie, but they kind of forcefully expanded it or whatever into 3 movies or whatever. Um for the most part, the Lord of the Rings movies slap. All right? That's good storytelling, and I have no idea how you could possibly go back, read the books, and still manage to like fuck up so hard.
Forced sympathy. The mantra goes something like this: look, this character is being mistreated. You must then feel bad for her and like her. The correct response to that is, of course, why is this character being mistreated? For all we know,
Yeah.
Galadriel was being a complete twerp just moments before this scene, and is totally deserving of having her boat sunk. There's no narrative reason that the show gives for Galadriel to be tormented here. It's just an attempt at manipulating the audience into feeling bad for the poor, helpless victim, and thus hopefully liking her. Contrast that with Arcane and the plight of Vin and Powder. The show.
Yeah, Arcane was goated. Like, I don't play League of Legends or anything, but like I used to or whatever. So I kind of know some of the characters. And when I watched Arcane, I was like, this is good storytelling. This is awesome.
Opens with an actually tragic scene, and it doesn't stoop to the pointed, petty tactics of Rings of Power. Galadriel lives in Valinor, a place of transcendent peace and harmony, so the writers contrived an inane attempt at sympathy. Arcane is set largely in a brutal slum of a city, but it gives its main character a plucky, relentless attitude that rejects the victimhood status which so many other modern properties confer upon their heroines. Because if you're a victim, how can anyone hate you? Well, it's pretty easy when you're incredibly smug and don't give a rat's ass about the safety of your troops. The me against the world vibes from Galadriel in the first episode are just so tired and overdone. We know she's going to be right about Sauron still being around because of course she is. She can take down the Ice Troll single-handedly because of course she can. However, that on its own would not necessarily be bad writing. Galadriel, because that is what the show calls her, is quite old and thus an experienced warrior. I'm willing to accept that this character has spent centuries in combat and thus is highly skilled and capable of such feats.
So, same thing. Like, I'm willing to accept that Galadriel's like a goated ass warrior, but when you don't show the audience at least something of how she got like that, then it's a little bit like misleading. Like what he's talking about. Like the same thing happened in like the new Star Wars movies. So much of the story happened off screen that by the time we get to the actual movie itself, there is supposed to be some sort of understanding that so much like stuff happened that okay, here we are, and if you didn't watch all this other shit, then oh well.
What makes this scene so absurd is that all the other elves around her, these warriors hand-picked to exterminate Sauron and the remnants of his armies, are completely and totally hapless and helpless to the point that they might as well be a different species than their leader. It's totally fine to have protagonists who are supremely skilled, but it's a really poor choice to have the supporting characters be complete buffoons in order to showcase that skill.
Yeah.
Galadriel might as well just be out there on her own. Really, most of the examples I've listed tend to just do things solo. It is up to them and them alone to win the day. As in Captain Marvel and Mulan, all they really need to do is seize the power that is already within them, to throw off the shackles others would impose upon them, and victory is theirs. The dramatic shift between victimhood and total power is what these movies believe to be meaningful character work, but it's really just a violent swing from one extreme to the other, and neither end of the spectrum is healthy. There's a huge difference between having agency and being world-conquering forces of nature that only needed to shrug off the hands holding them down. If you're going to write the hero of a story, a central character who ultimately is able to conquer the evil he or she faces, you need to make them earn it. That protagonist needs to struggle or even suffer as they obtain the strength necessary to win the day. Ideally, they would find such strength through meaningful relationships, or by learning from those wiser or more experienced than them. Recent examples of this done at least fairly well: Rita Vertasky, a supremely skilled soldier having to work together with Tom Cruise's character, whose name I forget, to gradually establish a plan to win the war. Vi being motivated by love for her sister, relying on others in her fight, badly missing the guidance of her father figure. Kate Bishop being mentored by Hawkeye as she realizes how ill-prepared she is for the world she has stumbled into. There are plenty of other examples of female protagonists who match
Toph.
that description, but I wanted to point out some from within the last decade to
Toph was a good
emphasize the
character.
point that audiences do not, by and large, just hate any strong woman on screen right now, just the ones whose character arcs are flatter than the state of Kansas.
Oh my god. Oh man, like really, man. Like there's nothing wrong, like he just said, there's nothing wrong with like the strong female protagonist. But if you want to have that, they better go through some shit, all right? And it can't be like at childhood, like the whole Lord of the Rings thing with like, oh, you messed with my little origami thing and then beat me up for like no reason. Like, okay, there's nothing to that. Look at the examples like this dude just gave you. Like Arcane, Toph, the what was it, the Live Die Repeat movie. Like there's a ton of great examples, and even more so that he probably didn't even mention, of women that have gone through the ringer and have come out the other side.
Characters who need only achieve self actualization are not only boring and lack meaningful character work, they teach us awful lessons. The idea that all that is needed for success is to seize the strength and power already within you is a harmful notion that discredits the value of relationships, personal growth, and humility. You are sufficient, these stories tell their audiences. You don't need to change. Our heroes are supposed to inspire.
Yeah, if you were to tell that to like a guy, you're sufficient enough, you don't need to change. That also sounds like a horrible story. I am not interested in that story. Have there been movies that have uh like told a story like that? Probably. And what do I think about those stories? They're dog shit. So this is not like a I hate women thing. Again, this is a I don't like good writing or I hate bad writing thing.
Us, either by their ability to grow beyond their own flaws and failures, or despite being paragons of virtue and goodness, still having to struggle against overwhelming odds and having to use their wits to be creative, to trust their team to win the day. Indeed, some of the most admirable characters in fiction, ones who do not suffer all that much personal growth due to having already attained great virtue, find themselves insufficient. This is most clear in Tolkien's work, where characters such as Faramir, Theoden, and Aragorn, great men who suffer little if any inner turmoil, at least in the books, are not able to win the day, but rather can only play their part in the war that will define the future of Middle-earth.
And that's another thing. You know, whenever you watch movies and things, it's like from like an artistic standpoint, there's always going to be like, you know, from at least from a director slash writer perspective, you know, they collaborate. There's always going to be this, what does the audience expect from the movie? You know, a lot of the times the audience is going to expect, you know, like a basic story thing of like, okay, here's the character. They're gonna they're gonna go through some shit in the beginning, you know, the first act. In the second act, it's like still building. You know, maybe they did like maybe they failed a couple times, or maybe they go through like a training montage type thing where they go through some struggle, and then on the third act, there's like the climax and you know, the conclusion, and the kid like the protagonist wins the day. The protagonist overcomes the obstacle or whatever. But there's always going to be like a small group of people that, you know, are going to want to, you know, tell a different story where the character does not win the day. The character does not overcome the thing. So the argument for that is because in real life, you know, people don't overcome their shit every day. People fail a lot and they keep on failing. So that's a more realistic depiction of, you know, like a story. But, you know, when you go to see a movie, you want to do the whole temporary suspension of disbelief thing. You want to have like some relief from like the real world. So, you know, you see the character, they build, climax, hey, they overcame the thing. Hey, I got some good feelings. So there's that thing. Seldom will you ever see a movie where you have like all this build up, and then the main character just dies and the bad guy wins. Like there's so few movies, I can't even think about it right now. It's you know, because it's not satisfying. It's not a satisfying, you know, close to a movie. But that is a real option in real life. I don't know, maybe it's just not explored enough, or I don't know.
They teach us the message we need to hear, the message that Disney and Hollywood want to keep from our ears. And that is, you are not enough, but you still can do great things. They may not bring you glory, they may even bring you pain and suffering, but if you put the good of others before your
Boy, this is the low point for Major Cage when he runs away from the fight From those who need him. Oh, I don't know what this is from.
Own needs and wants, you will find true and lasting
Oh.
happiness.
Oh, that was his name from the Live Die Repeat movie, Major Cage.
So many modern heroines fail to win the love of the audience because they take shortcuts to power. They are elevated by the story rather than having to climb up.
And nobody likes a cheater that takes shortcuts in life. You may do it, and depending on the optics of it, you could come out a winner. But there's always the option that you cheat, you take the shortcut, and what are the optics of it? You look like an idiot.
Their own character arc. They are shallow character molds created largely to prove a point or push an agenda, and perhaps most importantly, they tend to care for themselves, their own success, their own ideas of what it means to be fulfilled. Hollywood and Disney in particular seem to want so badly to provide us with examples of powerful women, but they fail to understand what makes for a good example or role model. The heroines they prop up are too often shallow, unlikable, and exhibit many of the traits, such as arrogance and abrasiveness, that their creators find abhorrent in male protagonists.
Okay. Not every character has to be like a Boy Scout type character, like Superman, or Goku. Characters are way more interesting when they have character flaws. It just so happens that one character flaw, I guess, in some, male characters in whatever movies is the arrogance or whatever. I mean, I don't know. He's just like throwing this like a statement out there as an example, but like arrogance, yes, it can be a character flaw, and likewise it can in women. But to not build off that and have some sort of like yin and yang type thing within the character where it reflects, like in one scene you could be like arrogant, but then in the next scene you could be like triumphant or whatever. It's, I don't know like what movies they like base this off of or whatever.
How is this fixed? Simple. Create characters to tell a story, not to prove a point. Either show flawed characters who have to grow and change to heal their inner wounds and overcome their shortcomings, or give us paragons of virtue who have to struggle, sacrifice, and suffer due to the evil they face.
Perfect. Perfectly said. I couldn't have said it better myself. Like all these movies and shows that came out and where it featured like a strong female lead, if they were to spend like a couple more months and maybe come up with some better writing, I think those movies would have just slapped. All right. I truly do. The movies and the shows, they would have been great. It just take, like, what is happening with all the writing? No wonder they're on a writer strike. I hope they stay on a writer strike, dude. Like all these writers and people, like they just need to stop writing. Have the next wave of writers come in or whatever. Because like that last gen, they certainly showed that what their abilities were or whatever. So,
but most importantly, write characters whose defining moments do not come as they realize their own worth and value, that they themselves are sufficient, but rather as they decide to take selfless action for the good of others.
I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you!
Well, those are all my rambling thoughts on the matter. I hope we see lots more characters like Vi, Kim Wexler, Rita Vertasky, and Evelyn from the Quiet Place movies.
Yeah.
I just realized 2 of those characters are played by Emily Blunt. No surprise there, considering her publicly stated thoughts on the strong female lead trope. Anyhow, let me know your...
Oh, dang. Oh,
to
shit.
put it mildly,
Oh, no.
discourse
Let me go
in
back. Let me go
America
back.
is...
I wanted to read that. Oh, shit. Where'd that go?
Well, those are all my rambling thoughts on the matter. I hope we see lots more characters like Vi, Kim Wexler, Rita Vertasky, and Evelyn from the Quiet Place movies. I just realized 2 of those characters are played by Emily Blunt. No surprise there, considering her publicly stated...
Okay, Blunt, who stars in and executive produces gritty Prime Video series The English, slammed the concept of the strong female lead character. Ooh. It's the worst thing ever when you open a script and read the words strong female lead. Okay, true. Blunt told The Telegraph, that makes me roll my eyes and I'm already out on board. I wonder, like how many male actors open a script and they read strong male lead and they just roll their eyes? I'm pretty sure it's like it has to be like somewhat the same. You know, if you're just like strong out of nowhere, you're not interesting. Like nobody really wants to play again like a Boy Scout character. It's like, oh, I'm just doing good, boss. Oh, I'm just doing good by me or whatever. Like that character is not interesting at all. She added, those roles are written as incredibly stoic. You spend the whole time acting tough and saying tough things. Yeah. And granted, there have probably been movies like this, um, like back in the day, where movies were kind of new, so they could kind of get away with it or whatever. But as movies go on and on throughout the years, and they are just being made, you need to make like more complex characters. Um, but understandably, the more complex the character is, the more taboos you would have to get into in, human existence. And I would imagine those would probably lead to more rated R ratings in movies. And, depending on what kind of movie, you're trying to make for a certain type of audience, then it's going to be a hit or a miss, essentially.
Stated thoughts on the strong female lead trope. Anyhow, let me know your thoughts and opinions, and I will see you in the next one.
Dang. This was a goated ass video. This was like short and sweet on like the whole crux of the whole Hollywood, writer strike, bad movies, so on and so forth. This actually slapped. This was awesome. Like like the dude pointed out all the flaws of like all the older movies, and literally just took examples, like good examples of good female characters. And I was just like, dang, he was on point. I am 100% subscribing. I am liking this, and this was just awesome. I want to see more from Master Samwise. Oh man, this was so good, man. I definitely want to see more. This is awesome. That's all I gotta say, man. Oh, okay. I'll catch you guys on the next one. All right, peace.